I've made some slight alterations to my normal testing, and I figured I'd do hopefully a quick video to basically explain what it is, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, etc., etc. I finished the new testing on this VG10 little temp rinse. I haven't finished it on this HAP 40, and I really need to do it with this Steve Kalari 4V Steadfast. Normally what I would do is I would actually cut sanding rolls into little tickets, and I'd stack them up in piles of 10, and I test the edge retention with this index card. I'd hold it at about 60 degrees. I take the knife at about 60 degrees and I'd slide it down. Basically, I want gravity to be basically testing the edge. No downward force. I really want gravity basically cutting. And the index card is obviously a low standard of sharpness. And what I found through testing years ago was that if it didn't pass that red line and you go to use the knife on cutting some cardboard, it'd be really slipping out through cuts, basically become a safety hazard. So that was how I determined when edge retention or when testing should actually stop. Testing number wise, this VG10 190, this HAP 40 Knife Center exclusive Andela got about 305, and this 4V custom heat treat did 485, which is about 38.6% more edge retention than the 4V Spyderco, the Pair 3 that I recently tested. After that test, I implemented another test where I would actually take a 60%, technically 40%. Let's say we'll use this VG10 for example, and I would do 40% of 190. Forget what that number actually was. And then I would hit it on the ice block, 20% of whatever 190 actually is. Test it on here. If it passed, I'd keep cutting. If not, it'd be a fail. 60% was my measuring stick of a knife having good edge stability, fair amount of toughness, good edge retention, well balanced. That's how I used to actually do it. I feel like there's a lot of cut testing out there where everything is completely controlled. Everybody lives in a bubble. They really just are testing wear resistance. I figured if you start implementing other variables in a controlled chaos kind of manner, it'll actually tell you more attributes about the steel. M390 20CV doesn't have the stability, doesn't have the toughness. M398's the same way. They fold apart like a lawn chair whenever I actually started doing those impact tests. Can't remember what this one actually is. I still got to test this guy. But the reason why I did that was to get a more realistic view of what the steel is truly capable of. I feel like toughness is way overrated. I think edge stability, edge strength is more important in a knife steel than overall toughness, especially for everyday carry blades. Something that you're going to use out in the woods, I think toughness is something more to consider. But for an everyday carry, general purpose, I think edge stability is higher on my priority list. This is just me. Now, the new iteration or the new evolution of my testing incorporates a standard for fine edge testing. Something that I have seen, but something that I kind of want to replicate with my own style. A lot of people, Gerald, Outpost 76, they usually tape up the knife so only one edge or 1 inch cutting edge is actually doing the cutting. I don't bother with taping my knives or anything like that. I got an older brother who's a professional painter, so I could get the tape for free. But I feel like I could just match the sized sanding roll to the actual cutting edge and just basically use the knife how it's intended ergonomically, just to get an overall feel for it. That's what I do. I got 1.5-inch rolls, 2-inch rolls, and I even got 1-inch rolls for smaller edges, and it'll go up to about 4.5 inches, I believe, of cutting edge length. So that covers a variety of different knives, and I think it basically goes up to paring knives and petty knives in case I ever want to dive into kitchen knife testing, steel testing. But what I decided to actually change was implementing, this is calculator paper, which is much flimsier, if that's a word, than the index card. And what I found was if I double it up and I actually do the exact same style of cutting gravity-wise, and when I measure it up, to the red line on the index card, it actually matched Gerald, Outpost 76, what he would use for fine edge. He would normally shave arm hair. I wanted to do something different. My whole testing is completely different. So many people, I shouldn't say so many people, but there's controlled cardboard testing, there's Pete's rope testing, there's Catra testing. I'd like to do something completely different. Variety, spice of life. And the reason why I wanted to test fine edge capability on any knife steel is just to know where the range actually exists, where you could use a strop to actually bring back the edge. A lot of steel, especially simple steels like VG10, you probably could take it beyond that sharpness point. But if I keep it within the calculator paper, that's kind of like a standardized measuring stick, if you will, to know how far and what the front edge sharpness really is. I think it goes unnoticed in Gerald's testing, but it's something that I want to implement, and I don't have enough data points out there. Like I said, I have a lot more testing to do. This is just an overview of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and I hope it makes sense to a lot of people. Stropping compound, I always recommend stroppy stuff. Edge is always set on this 1K super vitrified diamond stone from Big Brown Bear. I always use 100 grit sanding paper, and that's basically about it. I think it's really good to actually implement this style of testing to get more of a realistic expectation of what the steel is actually capable of. Now, when I do the fine edge testing, I adjust the percentages a little bit lower. Before, I used to use just the sanding roll, then the ice block, and then the index card. I needed to have a lower standard to actually test for fine edge sharpness so I can move close to, I can get like an accurate number. So I adjusted it to 40%. So for this example, this was 190. I had 20% cutting on the sanding roll, which I believe was 38. And then I did 38 chops on ice that was frozen for 28 hours and tested it with this. Now I would double up the paper because one sheet was too flimsy. You'd cut off a sheet of paper, you'd fold it up, and then that would actually give me the testing result that I wanted. I tested this guy, 40% it passed, 50% it passed, 55% I think it passed, and at 60% it kind of failed. Now I would take that and measure it up with the red line. And then I kept on going, and I got up to, I think, 114, 115, which is about 71, 72%. M4 and 4V Spyderco did a lot lower, but the VG10 absolutely did phenomenal. I know the front end sharpness was the highest. I tested M4, Spyderco 4V, and this VG10 all in the same run. I haven't done this custom heat treated 4V just yet, but it's on my to-do list. But that's my new testing. I need to acquire more data points, and I hope it's actually useful to people that use their knives, or live vicariously through me. Really understand what the steel is actually doing. Oh, that's it.